Albina and Tejal from Access for All for making this session accessible to everyone. And with that, it's time to dive in. The floor is all yours.
Hello. It's called Shashi Tharoor. It's quite a surprise. I'm just very thrilled to be able to moderate this. Also because I've read both their books cover to cover. Under the Influence is Malvi's book. It's an extraordinary book. I highly advocate all of you go and get it. And of course now memes for Mammiji, which is Santosh's book, is out. So get onto all online as well as on-ground stores and get it, because I have the privilege of having an advanced copy, and I've again read it cover to cover, and absolutely enthralling. What's important about having these two on a panel together is because when we talk or we reflect on the theme, which is reeling us in, pun intended completely on the word reel, reeling us in, you've got to hit different to slay. We know that Santosh is going to give us the cultural sociological words, and Malini is going to give us the first-hand creator influencer lens. So with that brief introduction, I'm just going to dive straight in. Malini, you've lived through the evolution of digital influence. I mean, you're too young and beautiful to be called the mother of digital media and influencers in this country, but in effect you are. I mean, there's a whole generation that adores you for what you've done. From blogging to Instagram to Reels, you've seen it all. How has the definition of an influencer changed since you started?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Rishi and I go way back. We used to have a radio show together called Overdrive, some millions of centuries ago. I think that the word influencer, I think now is kind of a bad word in some circles. You know, just like feminism is wrought with a lot of complexity. I think that the word influencer changed from the idea that your average girl or guy next door was helping you make choices that felt out of your reach and too condescending when it came from a fancy glossy magazine. It was aspirational but achievable. But now it's a lot more complicated because it's become an industry. I remember seeing a really cool meme actually ages ago where it says, you know, influencer isn't always a good thing, because when you're under the influence, you could be driving drunk, or when you have influenza, you might be ill. So when people come to your social media feed, you have to think about, do they feel better or worse when they leave, just like any kind of illness. And I actually now, I'm actually working on my third book. First time we're talking about this is called Unsocialize Me, because I think we made a huge mistake with how we use social media, and I admit I'm part of the problem, but I'm trying to fix it. I feel that the really important thing to do on social media is in the name itself, be social, which is what we want to do, and we'll probably unpack that later. But I think the influencer journey has been far and wide, and I think content creators have added so much value and entertainment and joy to people's lives, but they've also created FOMO and anxiety, and my life is not good enough. So it's a little bit of both. It's bittersweet.
You know, what I also love about book number 2, now that she's revealed there is a book number 3, is that there's a fair amount of social media etiquette. And she actually uses her own life examples. She says, these are things that I got wrong. And very rarely do you see an author saying that in a book for public consumption, saying, these are things I got wrong, and I don't want you to get them wrong, so maybe you shouldn't do this. And she gently nudges you in the right direction, which I think is just great writing, and more importantly, it calls for a great literary conscience. So good on you. In Memes from Amiji, what I loved is you explore how technology reshapes everyday Indian life. And in effect, it's a collection of your wonderful essays. A lot of them have to do with that. How has social media today changed the texture of our culture, of Indian culture?
I mean, in so many ways, right? I mean, if you would think about it, let me start at the idea of the smartphone or the mobile phone itself, you know, and then I'll come to social media. It's actually extraordinary. I mean, the generation that grew up without a mobile phone and a generation today, I mean, the idea that each individual has a personal connection to the universe. everybody's mobile phone is different, right? We may be using similar apps, but everyone has a unique, it's a fingerprint. It's like a unique way of connecting with the outside world. And it gives you the right to express yourself. If you look at it through human history, the means of broadcast have always been tightly controlled. Always. You never, if I remember the time that I was growing up, where could I express myself in any public forum? The newspaper carried 3 letters to the editor every day. 3 people who could express themselves. Or, you could send a request on Vivid Bharti from Jumri Talaiya, whatever, for a different song. That is the extent to which there was interactivity. That was the extent to which our voices could be heard. And now everybody has a personal broadcast channel, right? So what it does at the most fundamental level, what social media has done is created a sense of the individual and the significance of the individual. I am somebody, I am important no matter where I am. The world caters to me. And it goes further when you have a touch screen, right? The touch screen is something where every part of the touch screen leaps to accommodate your slightest whim. So we are training people without wordlessly. Day by day, people are being trained to realize their own significance, their importance. And you can see that in the way we take selfies, right? You go to the Taj Mahal and you are the monument. The Taj Mahal is a prop, right? We completely reverse the relationship between ourselves and the world. That sense of importance, which at one level is empowering, at another level is delusional, and at a third level is also debased, because the other thing it has done, social media has done, is that the slightest thought I had, the least amount of effort that I put into any form of thought, I can put it out there, believing in its greatness, right? And therefore, in a way, it has made us more primal, more primitive, and we see that across the world. The rise of Trump at one level, the rise of the kind of polarization we are seeing is all because, in a way, I would argue that one of the things that keeps civilization going are small acts of hypocrisy. Right? When we tell each other that actually I hate somebody, or I think they're bored, but if they ask me how was my talk, you say it was very nice. These are little acts of hypocrisy that keep civilization going. In social media, because of anonymity, because of the fact that it's so easy, we've lost that, right? So the texture of everyday life has become cruder, at one level more honest, at another level vile. So I think there's a whole lot of stuff that I think is happening simultaneously.
So there are 2 things, Mali. One is people say, oh, we've reached peak influencer levels. And the other thing is this whole thing about influencer fatigue. And I noticed that, there was a time when people used to put out very polished, curated kind of content, very structured. My question to you is, do you feel that audiences now are tired of that, of polished, structured, curated content? And are they looking for something more authentic? And at the other end of the spectrum, is the creative economy really expanding, or have we reached that peak influencer level?
So I have a nostalgic memory to my mind that I have to share. I don't even know if you remember it, Rishi, but this is like 1994, okay, my bedroom in Mayur Vihar. And Rishi used to have a dial-in radio show. And the only way you could record that is if you had a cassette player. You had to be half the audience, has no idea what I'm talking about. But basically, I remember requesting a Paul Abdul song and Rishi playing it, and he's rushing to record the song and save it. And the funny thing is, I had said, it was very romantic, there's a boy out there looking for me. And then some guy had left his phone number from Australia and gave him his phone number on the show. And so many girls pretending to be Malini had called him. And when I finally called him, he's like, oh, if you're just ready, you call me next week. And I did, and we became pen pals. And there's such a crazy history to that. But the effort and time it takes is very different. But coming to your question, I think a couple of things have happened. I think that there is definitely fatigue in the influencer. I think it started off kind of, you make it up as you go in your bedroom with whatever equipment you have. Now everyone is selling you all the equipment you need for the perfect life, let it be manicured, let it look perfect. But the whole allure of social media was that it looked real and raw. So even the biggest platforms, Meta, all of them will tell you now that the real, raw-looking content performs better, and that's what people are really looking to consume. But I guess I'm saying this out loud now, but don't call me the age of the influencer. I feel is coming to an end. I think if everybody's an influencer, nobody's an influencer. I think that the age of the impactor is coming, and I really feel that an impactor is someone who knowledgeable in their field. And you can still use social media. I mean, the point of social media was to be able to connect at a scale that's not otherwise humanly possible. You can have, and I know this for a fact, you can follow 7,500 people max on Instagram before they say no more. I learned this the hard way. Now I have to unfollow people, it's very awkward. But it's really one of those things where people who have knowledge in a particular vertical or subject are the real impactors, and that's, I think, where it's shifting to. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of the influencers are making the leap into film and television because they're entertainers. But the true influencer, the difference between an impactor and influencer is very simple. An influencer might affect what you buy, an impactor changes how you think. And over time, I think that people are going to start using social media more mindfully. It's already happening in smaller communities. Instead of doing this endless, mindless brain rot scroll, they're going to stop. And I was just talking to Q backstage. I was saying it's so nice that people still do read, not just can read. You know, so I think that there is a shift coming. There's still going to be that many and more accounts to follow, but I think we're going to be a little more mindful about what we consume.
Very well said. And you know, it's such a wonderful coincidence that Santosh's book talks about this consumption here. It's a very important aspect of his book. Now, would you say, Santosh, that this whole influencer era has been a reflection of a deeper societal need, the need to be seen?
Yeah, I think it's true. I think it's true on both sides. I think, I mean, fundamentally what are influences? The fact that you had a time when we heard the experts who were authoritative voices. So, you had editorials at one level, you had film stars at the other level, you had celebrities who were large screen celebrities, distant. And you had brands also that advertised, again, a very kind of an abstract, very abstracted from real life. While you're watching television, you get these fantasy stories that are coming at you. What fundamentally what our influencers do is to interpret the world. Right? So if I was to speak in commercial terms, celebrities represent the brand, influencers represent the people. Fundamentally, that is the difference. Right? Influencers are people like me, telling me about stuff. They are telling me how to buy. They are also telling me how to think about the world. They are telling me, whatever is of interest to them. So essentially, it's a peer community that you create, right? That's what influencers are doing, where you're seeing the voice of people like yourselves. And in that sense, it's a deeply democratic idea. The fact that you want to listen to people who have a shared experience like yours, who do not come from a completely different world, and yet in some areas they have probably thought about it a little more than you have, whether it is makeup at one level, whether it is music, whether it is classical music or art. But the fact that they are in a position and they speak from your vantage point, and they are not on a pedestal, I think is one of the strongest things about the reason why influencers have come into being. And I think it speaks a lot for a society that wants. At one level, it means that every individual has a right, as you said, of being seen. I am somebody, because I have the microphone in my hand, I think other people can hear me. But at a social and a collective level, it is when society moves from high horses and pedestals to people like us. And I think that at a certain level, you can talk about the ills of this era, but at a certain level, one must acknowledge that that's a deep act of democratization.
One of the things that was a logical thing for me to gravitate towards following Malini on social media, apart from the fact that we're friends, is that she was such, and continues to be, such an incredibly well-rounded personality. I mean, and like they say in Hindi, "Ghaan ghaan ka pani bhi hai." She started off, working as on the internet, on MTV's internet site. Were you a web designer?
So I used to write, my business card said channel head romancing sexuality. My mother was horrified.
So there you are. So she was running the web piece for MTV, then she becomes a radio presenter, then she becomes an entrepreneur, now she's an author, and really to me, that is personality. And you've said it, you're very open about this, even in your writing. You say, the internet loves personality, man. But here's the elephant in the room. In an era of AI-generated faces, does personality still stand a chance?
I think it stands an even better chance because the thing that AI does, and the sort of crash course, is it generates things that millions and millions of people have said around the world, and it's pattern recognition. So whenever you're using ChatGPT and it's giving you an answer, it's actually not that intelligent. It's actually just recreating answers that it has seen time and time again. Certain words follow certain words, and the ones that follow most often are that. But the true winners at the end of the game will be the ones who have emotion and empathy and high EQ. My best friend is sitting in the audience right here, Rich, and he said something so interesting. We always think of the internet as this, toxic place and this negative place, and the internet is filled with so much negativity. But the internet isn't some alien nation that just showed up, right? It's not like District 9 where these people came and now we have to make do with it. We are the internet, so whatever we have put out there is also us, so it's also on us to clean that up. And similarly, I feel that there's a couple of things, and I'll just give you a little thought to think about. Raise your hand if you use social media. Do you use Instagram? Everyone does, okay? And do you think of yourself, raise your hand if you think of yourself as a good listener and a friendly person. Yeah? Now let me ask you this. When you post something on your own social media, and everyone feels this, right? Do you feel bad sometimes when you post something meaningful and not enough people comment? Feel bad? Raise your hand. And about the people who do comment or like it or leave a message, do you sometimes just click heart or drop an emoji in response? Now think about what you've done differently than real life. As much as we want a meaningful connection online, we don't do the work that it requires. We will, suppose I said something meaningful to you right now, and we're having a conversation on stage. In real life, would you, at the end of my long message or comment, say, and walk off? That ends that conversation right there. But we expect emotional depth and meaning and friendship on a medium where we are not willing to give it, even when so many people are fighting and vying for other people's attention. Those 3 people who came and commented or liked, what did we give them back? And I think that's the big mistake that we're making. Whenever I talk to brands or people and they say, I can't make content, I don't want to post, I'm like, don't post anything. Go use social media to give love, to acknowledge, to interact. That's where the real dopamine is. It's called the helper's high. And if I urge you that today, if you went home from your social media and stopped refreshing your last post to see how many people didn't come, and went somewhere else or went to those 3 people who commented that you just did this or a heart to and started a conversation, you might end up with a real life friend from from a non-IRL experience.
Nice. You're all just reeling in the claps today, aren't you? Nice. Thank you for being such an involved audience. We need more of that. Lovely. Santosh, you've written about the democratization of expression, and you also mentioned a couple of times in the conversation thus far. Has social media truly democratized creativity? Because at one level, I also see lots of new hierarchies, and I'm going to get Malini's view on this too. So, are we seeing true democratization of creativity, or simply creating new hierarchies?
I think it's both. Hierarchies are a fact of life, but let's look at creativity. I think there's an absolute surge of creativity, and there's no question about it. And the fact that TikTok doesn't exist now, but now you see that in Reels with TikTok, actually you saw it in its lowest form. The kind of stuff you saw coming out from everywhere. A village, somebody cooking for 1,000 people, and then the person gets hundreds of thousands of followers, just cooking, right, stuff. And even now, in Reels also, you have so many, there's, for example, actually follow this person, Life of Pooja, I don't know how many followers. She's this Bengali woman who's married woman in a village. And she is sort of talks about the difficulty of being a woman in a rural setting. Fascinating stuff, and it's fascinating. And plus you have so many different ways, and it's a new art form that I think has come into being. And I think I absolutely believe that it's something that, along with the other things, it has unleashed. It has unleashed hate, it has unleashed vitriol, it has done all of that. And so, some of that in creative ways also. But fundamentally, it has unshackled expression. Are there hierarchies within that? There is hierarchy. Any structure will create hierarchies. So, to my mind, I would not see this as a creative explosion versus hierarchy kind of a question. I think that both of them need to be acknowledged for what they are. Yes, creative explosion, yes, hierarchy. Both of them, I think, have to coexist. But I do certainly think that there has been look at memes of such inventive stuff that you have, right? I mean, I come from the advertising industry, and we thought that we had the sort of we were the monopolists of creating short form, interesting sort of creative work. And I look at it today and I say advertising is dead. Where is creativity coming in from? What are the stuff that we pass to each other? Which is the last time we passed an ad and to anybody else? All of it is coming from people from all over the place who have had no training. They're not called creative, people. They just are creative and they're doing stuff which is the reason like idiots are like on reels going, with a dazed expression of like you keep scrolling. Because there is some creativity, there's also dopamine and there's also the other stuff, but there is creativity for sure.
So there's this rise of the micro-influencer and the nano-influencer. And obviously that has also changed the influencer economy a little bit. So Mali, are smaller creators now as powerful as the big names? Because you see a lot of those big names now getting into cinema and Kusha Kapila and Mostly Sane, widening their horizons. Is there an opportunity here now for the micro and the nano influence?
So I think, and I think you bring up such an interesting point. I think the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. So there's going to be a lot of what people love and love to hate. And I've actually, in my book, unpacked conversations with my haters to say, like, what's the problem? And they're like, this is the only way you'll notice me. And a lot of it comes from that. And a lot of the creepy guys sending weird messages are like 16-year-old boys who are just never equipped to be on the internet. And there's a great movie on Netflix called Social Dilemma. You must watch it to really understand how as humans we're not equipped to deal with so much information. But to come to your question, see the nano-micro-influencer, what does that mean? That means, and okay, this is actually another experiment Rich does. I'm going to ask to do something that you normally don't do. But let me first ask you, raise your hand if you think you're an influencer. Okay, now I'd like you to open your Instagram. If you don't remember how many people follow you, open it and look at your Instagram. And if the answer to the question, how many people follow you, is more than 0, you're an influencer. Due credit to Rich on this one. But literally, the point is that you influence people in your circle, whether it's 5 or 10 or 100. We just think of influencers in these much larger, unimaginable numbers. And in my book, I talk about something called unsee the numbers and see the people. The micro-nano influencer probably has more authentic reach and more authentic impact. Because we all know, elephant in the room, the bigger influencers, or any influencer can today spend amount of money and buy a certain number of people from Mexico who are going to follow it like color posts, So the point is that the nano-micro influencer probably has a lot less people following them, but people who are probably going to listen to their opinion or actually be influenced by what they say. I think the bigger problem is this. What is the biggest, most exciting career to have in India? Films, absolutely. And that's where you're seeing the content. It used to be different channels. You won Miss India, you became a Bollywood star, right? You did a reality show, eventually you got a TV show, you became a Bollywood star. You don't really look like Shah Rukh, you look like Shah Rukh adjacent, you got an OTT show. So that's kind of the way that it works. And now the influencer pathway is the next way to do that. But what else are we as an audience giving this much love and attention to? There's a rule I made on Miss Malini years ago. We did airport spotting, celebrity spotting, red carpet spotting. We never did funeral spotting. I found that horrifying. But let's be honest, how many people in this room will watch who came to whose funeral? So we're part of the problem. We can make as many comments as we like about what the influencers are doing, but what are we really consuming? And unfortunately, there is no pathway for a content creator who is showing, like Pooja, and I follow her too, it's incredible, what is her end goal? Like, where will she get from there? She might get a character, actor role in a film, and that's the holy grail for her. Where are the opportunities for creators of note who are doing something really fantastic and different that we will give enough precedence to or value to, that it becomes an exciting proposition? So we are part of the problem.
You know, I was just thinking of you this morning, Malini, because Malini and Zahid Khan are very dear friends. I've met him socially at many of your social engagements. And you were talking about funeral spotting, and he's just had a loss, and there's so many videos there of that funeral, and I'm like, is the family getting any privacy?
And unfortunately, people say as a celebrity, that's what you've signed up for. But you know, there's a great documentary that Al Jazeera did on the paparazzi, and as much as we blame the paparazzi, it's also not their fault. It's the pictures that sell. The magazine that buys the picture, whether it's in a magazine or social media, because you're spotting, if there weren't people consuming it, they wouldn't be able to sell it. So it's also the voyeuristic nature of the human mind that likes to watch people locked up in a house on Big Boss or Big Brother that are part of the problem. But I think that change can come. This is not a doom, woe is society kind of message at all. I mean, hopefully AI Atlas is going to land at Miss Universe contest is going to change forever. But I think that there is something to note and take back with you today is, as much as you might say, oh, I hate what an XYZ creator is doing, or this is so mindless, how much mileage and weight are you giving it, or how much doom scroll are you giving it? Are you mindfully consuming content just the way you think about what you put in your body, or you thinking about what you put in your brain when you're watching social media?
You know, Santosh, in India, more than a lot of countries, we were very mindful about our public self and our private self. And my question to you, and this segues, what Malini said just segues very beautifully into it. Do you think social media has blurred the lines between the public and the private self in irreversible ways?
I think it would be fair to say. I think it would be fair to say on the whole that that's what has happened. I think the idea of, I think one of the reasons why I do believe that the AI threat is actually more significant than anything else is that, look at it today. Today it's almost like interiority. The experiences that we have inside that we feel. When you go and you're bowled over by, you go to the hills and you see a majestic sight, or like the feeling that you get, of something of larger than yourself, something deep. What we are trying to do is even all of those feelings, either all our feelings happen on the internet, which means emotion becomes data as soon as emotion is experienced, because it is on the internet. So emotion is by definition data, or we document it as such. So even if it doesn't happen on the internet, something happens in real life, and the first thing we do is to take that and put that on the internet, which means we are training AI to simulate human experience, to actually blur. We are leaving nothing for ourselves. More and more, as we put stuff on the internet, the less we leave for ourselves. There is nothing within. Everything is exteriorized. Right? When that happens, tomorrow for an AI, and as far as regurgitation goes or remixing goes, most creatively, as many people have argued, are acts of recombination. So I mean, it's not, there's nothing really truly original in the world, right? You're picking up stuff and here you have a large language model, but that's the same. So I do believe that there is a real challenge. I do believe that there is a real challenge because of the fact that today human beings, if you do not keep the idea of a private self, if you say that some things cannot be exteriorized, unless you do that, if everything you're going to talk about, you use AI as a therapist, which means the deepest stuff that you have, the deepest problems that you have, you now confine. You are data. That is all you are. And so you keep feeding it data about yourself, it becomes smarter and smarter and smarter, till eventually it does not have a need for you. And in a sense, we are writing ourselves off, and we are writing ourselves out of the script deliberately, bit by bit by bit.
And there's a theory that we're already in the matrix.
Yes, absolutely.
I have these vivid visuals of the matrix flashing across my mind. But
The question is, would you want to wake up from it?
you've been very candid in Under the Influence, which is your book. And really, you should pick it up. She also talks about how she's learned the hard way that you should be and say things on the internet that you really mean. And it's not a fictional self that you're putting out there. Would you say this to another person? If you say yes, I would say this to another person, then put it out on social media, which I think is very valid advice. But now, I mean, since you've been so candid, it's a bit of a personal question. Does being real, quote unquote, real online come at a personal cost, man? There's privacy, there's vulnerability, there's burnout, all those issues that people have to deal with.
I mean, I 100% admit I'm addicted to my phone. It's definitely a problem because I feel, I used to justify it to myself by saying that, hey, I've committed to a virtual reality, quote unquote, where I have to be present because I wouldn't disappear from real life for 3 days on end, so I can't digitally detox. I detox by playing more games or following mindful accounts. But I think that there's two parts to this. I mean, who runs a Bollywood blog that has a rule that says you can't write anything you can't say to someone's face? That means 85